There are environments built on the promise that every movement will be recorded, every entry checked against another until nothing escapes the quiet discipline of procedure. In such places, entire lives unfold inside forms and passwords, their presence marked not by sentiment or memory, but by whether a column balances at the end of the day. Most of the time, these structures seem to function without incident. Numbers appear where they should, reports close on schedule, and the individuals who tend to them pass through their routines without drawing notice. Yet the more fully a system trusts its own design, the less it expects any one person to test its limits. Tonight's entry turns toward that narrow interval, where an overlooked figure encounters an overlooked gap. One is left to consider. How many structures endure, only because the quietest individuals agree? Not to test them.
In the vast humming bureaucratic sprawl of the Federal Asset Recovery Bureau, also known as FARB, Leslie Whitman was a fixture so understated she practically dissolved into the institutional beige of the walls. For 12 years, she had maintained her position as Senior Data Analyst, a title as nondescript as the woman who bore it. Punctual, precise, and perpetually polite, Leslie was the kind of employee management praised without ever remembering. Her desk in Section C12 was a microcosm of her existence. A government-issued laptop, neatly stacked folders labeled by year and asset class, and a lone-potted succulent that thrived in the low fluorescence environment. She spoke little, smiled often, and was the sort of person who people described as nice, before realizing they had nothing further to add. Leslie had been a goody two-shoes her entire life. The kind of girl who returned library books on time, never jaywalked, and ensured her garbage was separated into the correct recycling bins. Teachers had loved her. Neighbors barely noticed her. Life had been lived within the lines, colored with precision and restraint. But even the most reserved souls harbor shadows. FARB was responsible for the custody and eventual liquidation of assets seized during federal investigation. Real estate, vehicles, art, and increasingly, cryptocurrency. Digital wallets loaded with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and countless altcoins were held in tightly controlled hot and cold storage. Layers of encryption, multi-signature protocols, and rigorous access logs made them, theoretically, impenetrable. Leslie had been assigned to the Digital Asset Reconciliation Team 3 years prior, a quiet promotion that increased her workload but not her visibility. Her primary duty was to audit blockchain transactions to ensure seized funds remained intact and properly accounted for. To most, it was a tedium of endless numbers and code. To Leslie, it became something else, a revelation. Amid the regular movement of digital assets between agency wallets, Leslie observed that transfers were often processed in predictable waves. During these windows, the sheer volume of routine transactions created enough background noise that individual entries blurred together. By acting at precisely these times, she found she could slip her own transfers into the system, unnoticed. It was less a loophole than a side effect of habit, one that depended not on secrecy, but on timing. For months, Leslie did nothing. The knowledge sat within her, inert yet restless. But knowledge, like any asset, resists being left idle. The decision, when it came, felt less like a choice and more like an inevitability. She crafted a plan with the same meticulous care she applied to everything else. It wasn't greed that drove her, at least not initially. It was invisibility, a lifetime of being unnoticed, undervalued, unremarkable. Here in this flaw was the opportunity to exist beyond the beige. She began small, a fractional movement 0.0005 Bitcoin, from an unmonitored wallet to one she controlled. The transfer went unnoticed. Encouraged, she refined her method, setting up a complex network of shell wallets, tumblers, and mixers to obfuscate the trail. Increasingly, Leslie learned to work within the ebb and flow of office distraction. She began taking frequent bathroom breaks, sometimes disappearing for nearly an hour at a time, conducting transfers while perched on the toilet seat. After several weeks, a rumor quietly circulated that she might be struggling with a digestive condition, and concerned glances were exchanged in the break room. To further diffuse attention, she hid throwaway phones in supply closets and behind ceiling tiles, each with alarms set to ring at irregular intervals. This forced staff to embark on periodic, fruitless hunts for the source of the electronic chimes, their annoyance reliably peaking just as Leslie moved larger sums of crypto into her personal wallets. Some days, she would wait until the telltale rattle of a printer jam echoed down the hall before executing even more substantial transfers, believing that nothing drew attention away from her screen like a supervisor swearing at a stalled toner cartridge. Months passed. Thousands of microtransactions accumulated, their total value quietly swelling into a quiet fortune. She remained careful, moving assets in amounts statistically indistinguishable from blockchain noise. Leslie came to work, smiled at the receptionist, completed her audits, and in the quiet hum of her cubicle, rerouted several $1 million worth of confiscated cryptocurrency into her own digital vaults. The irony was not lost on her. The girl who had never skipped class, who never cheated on a test, was now orchestrating one of the largest digital heists in federal history. Her downfall was, as such things often are, profoundly banal. It was a Wednesday, overcast. Leslie stayed late, as she often did, timing many of her transfers during the quietest hours. As part of her established routine, she switched her computer to the office guest Wi-Fi before each transaction, confident in the long-standing absence of network oversight. That evening, the guest network went down for maintenance with no notice. Without prompting, her computer reconnected to the main employee network. Leslie carried out her transfers as usual, monitor dimmed, movements precise. Unaware that her repeated visits to an assortment of cryptocurrency Tumblr websites were now being logged by the agency's internal system. These services, meant to obscure the origins of digital funds by mixing them with others, stood out starkly in the network audit, each one registered in jurisdictions of dubious standing, with operating addresses traced to obscure Caribbean islands best known for their imaginative approach to compliance. When the internal review finally began, every visit was traced directly to her computer in section C12, listed among key findings in the incident report. The slip-up was monumental, though Leslie did not realize it until it was too late. When she noticed the network switch after the fact, a quiet dread settled in. From that moment forward, every routine audit, every unexpected email, became a potential sign that discovery was imminent. Leslie became intensely paranoid. In the early hours on a rainy Sunday morning, she hired a dark web programmer through encrypted channels to create a kill switch, a redemption site set to release the funds to the public if she was ever exposed. The arrangement was simple. On activation, all of the stolen crypto would be made available for anyone fast enough to claim it, no restrictions applied. Though their exchange was brief, a quiet trust formed between them, born from shared histories of neglect. Leslie paid $1 million in crypto up front, and the programmer confirmed the site was in place. Leslie erased all traces and resumed her routines, waiting for the inevitable. It took the agency's forensic team several weeks to follow the anomaly to its source. The audit flagged repeated access to cryptocurrency Tumblr sites from within the agency, prompting further escalation. Analysis of the network logs linked those sites to two administrators whose identities were partially uncovered through registration records and prior investigations. When the names surfaced in the internal report, Interpol was notified. By coincidence, both site owners were detained at customs upon returning from a resort in Bali, reportedly sunburned and in poor spirits. During questioning, the owners promptly confessed and provided access to internal records, including transaction logs and a list of fast-tracked wallets. This information was relayed to domestic investigators, who traced the funds to a regulated exchange. The exchange, upon receiving an official request, supplied full KYC documentation, names, addresses, photographs, leaving little doubt as to the origin of the activity. Her arrest was swift, surgical. Federal agents intercepted her as she left her apartment for work, gripping a coffee mug. It toppled as she was cuffed, spilling everywhere across the pavement. The events that followed were quietly contained. No public statement was issued. Inquiries received only vague references to internal matters, and records were amended as needed. Rumors circulated of missing funds, unexplained audits, and an analyst taken from her apartment at dawn. Outside official channels, speculation filled the silence. During interrogation, Leslie was eerily calm. She admitted to everything without grand justifications or claims of coercion. Officials offered her a plea deal in exchange for returning the stolen funds. She refused. "It's not possible," she said. "A kill switch has already been activated." The statement drew skepticism until she provided the website's name and described its mechanism. Within days, an automated series of social media bots would announce a free public giveaway. Anyone, she explained, could seize the crypto, potentially even a single person if they acted quickly enough. For a moment, the room fell silent. Several officials reached for their phones, discreetly entering the website's address, their faces fixed in careful neutrality. After that, Leslie spoke no further. She was sentenced to 25 years in federal penitentiary, with no possibility of parole. The trial itself was never announced, and the specifics of her sentencing never appeared in official records released to the press. Meanwhile, the Redemption website began its countdown. Across the agency, a notable uptick in sick days and sudden vacations coincided with the window when withdrawals would open. Registration was required to participate and prompted by a straightforward online form. Many officials, in their eagerness, entered real names and addresses, uploading government identification with the confidence of routine and ignoring every basic privacy and security safeguard. The day the giveaway went live, 3 days before the automated social media posts were scheduled, withdrawals began almost immediately. Having learned of the site before the public, agency officials rushed to secure the funds in secret for themselves. But in a twist of fate, every attempted transaction produced not a confirmation screen, but a warning message stating that authorities had been notified of illegal activity. The users then realized it was a trap, an elaborate honeypot that had been waiting patiently for them all along. The system compiled IP addresses, registration details, and photographs of uploaded driver licenses, forwarding them in a standardized report to the FARB Compliance Division. Weeks later, disciplinary hearings were quietly convened. Several officials, having failed to recognize the sting, were sentenced to terms in the same facility as Leslie Whitman. No statement was issued. In the aftermath, it became tempting to search for order, to reframe the event as allegory, to suppose that Leslie had revealed something fundamental, not just about systems, but about selves. That visibility, withheld long enough, does not vanish, it compounds, and when it returns, it does so with interest. Interpretations multiplied. Some claimed she had become what the system could not model, a presence that only existed once it misbehaved. Others believed she had transcended the binary of guilt and innocence entirely, proving that identity itself is most legible in the moment it disrupts its surroundings. Still, none could say with certainty what she had been before, or what she had become after. Only that something had passed through the structure, and left it slightly less whole. In the end, perhaps it was never solely about Leslie, nor the invisible ledger she quietly rewrote. Perhaps what endures is not the sum that vanished, but the realization that every act of theft, however subtle, exposes something brittle in the systems built to prevent it. Deceit, properly executed, does not arrive with spectacle. It mimics the ordinary, hides in procedure, and trusts in routine to disguise its passage. What Leslie achieved was not a simple misappropriation, but a demonstration, an audit of faith itself that even the most secure account is vulnerable to the patient hand, the unnoticed transfer, the logic of someone willing to believe that rules are only as real as the attention paid to them. If anything remains, it is the quiet certainty that every safeguard contains its own invitation, and every ledger, no matter how meticulously balanced, is waiting to be rewritten.